Good morning. It is the second day of the seventh month, according to the seven species that Israel once offered in the temple. I'm just going to touch on that real briefly because I got thinking about that this morning. You know, there might be somebody that is interested in the seven species, not understanding that they're the first fruits offering. So I thought I would just pause and explain that the Nehemiah 10:35 tells us to bring the first fruits of our earth and the first fruits of the ground and the first fruits of the tree into the temple year by year. And it's Deuteronomy 8:8 that tells us what that list of produce was that was expected from Israel. It's pomegranates. I'm going to do it backwards. It doesn't matter. Today's pomegranates. It's pomegranates, dates, and olives for the seventh month. The first month is barley. The second month, Shavuot or Pentecost, is wheat. The fifth and sixth biblical month is grapes and figs consecutively. So right now, the pomegranates on the earth here in Israel, in our nation, are being harvested, and you can see them all over the market that they're being offered for sale. We had the dates on we had the figs on the sixth month, and we had the grapes in the fifth month, and we had the wild heirloom wheat for Shavuot. And finally, we also had the wild heirloom barley by the week of unleavened on Wave Sheaf Day. So that is how the people, and up until the day that the temple was destroyed, that is how they set and determined the calendar every year, was by the agriculture here in Israel. So right now, we're in the time of pomegranates, and today we're going to look at that because pomegranates, they line up with Yom Teruah, and we just had that yesterday because yesterday was the seventh month, and the first day we saw the moon of the seventh month on August the 9th after sunset, and August the 9th after sunset, and August the 10th during the daylight hours. We took our day of rest for Yom Teruah, and we also had some interesting events. I should probably tell you about that because there's a lot of people out there that are willing to prophesy by the national calendar of Israel, which is what the Jews living in Israel predominantly use. And they're willing to prophesy by their calendar without understanding that that's a calculated calendar. They began to calculate that calendar. They began to calculate the calendar because they knew that they were going to be leaving Israel. They were going to be exiled. And so Hillel the second made a calculation, and within that calculation, there was a small error, but he made this calculation, and they've been using that ever since. But that small error in that calculation carries them further and further and further away from and in discrepancy with the agricultural calendar, the way that the God of Israel, Elohim, set his system up to function. So all that to say, yesterday, on the biblical scriptural Yom Teruah, the head of CIA from the United States was in Israel. On this day, we struck in an Iranian tanker called Wisdom. Coincidentally, on the same day, there were two storage tankers in Iran that blew up with intense explosions and very intense fires. And that was on Yom Teruah. So now we're waiting to see what the response will be towards Israel. Okay, so that was just a brief look at something that happens in orchestration with the timing of Elohim. So today we're going to talk about the pomegranates, how they relate to Yom Teruah, and we're going to chase all the scriptures, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. And I certainly have. Every year when I go through these 7 first fruits offering in conjunction with the day they were due to be offered, I learned so much more. The book that we call the Bible, Genesis to Revelation, is such a deep book. I know that I will search it until my last breath and still have so many more epiphanies when I wake up. Okay, so pomegranates in Hebrew are called rimon. And this is not in the slideshow, and this is not written in the Bible, but as one who grows rimon, who pays attention to the land, I can tell you that the pomegranates bloom on Shavuot. Not only do the pomegranates bloom, but the olives bloom. And by the way, the dates start putting on their blooms as well. So pomegranates are called rimon. It is one of the first fruits of the 7th month. There are 3 in the 7th month, and Yah willing, if he tarries, if I wake up in the morning, if I'm given more days, we'll go through all 3 of the fruits in this 7th biblical month. So this fruit specifically coincides with what we call Feast of Trumpets, Yom Teruah, or Zikron Teruah. Now, this has become, to the Orthodox, or to the, let's just call it, to the Jews that do not know Messiah. This has become Rosh Hashanah. And the way it became that is they actually have 3 New Years. I think 3, maybe 4. I know 3. They have an agricultural New Year, which coincides with the barley. They have a New Year that coincides with the trees, and I don't remember if that's the 5th or the 6th month. And then they have what they call the civil New Year, which coincides with the 7th month and first day, which we think of Feast of Trumpets, and they call it the civil New Year. And that's how it became for them Rosh, head, Hashanah of the year. Okay, so how are we to understand that the pomegranates are associated with the Feast of Trumpets? I'm going to try to go through this really slow because there's a lot of new information here for some of you, I'm sure. But the first clue that we are given is pomegranates are the only fruit of the 7 species that is associated with a sound. There are very few places that we see the pomegranates mentioned in Scripture. We see that they are mentioned in conjunction with the hem of the garment of the high priest. We see that they are mentioned in conjunction with the 2 pillars on either side of the door of the temple. And then we see that they are mentioned in conjunction with the bride, the Shulamite, in the Song of Solomon. So this first place we're going to look is where it's on the garment of the high priest. Beneath the hem of it, his skirt, thou shalt make pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet round about the hem thereof, and bells of gold between them round about. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe round about. And it shall be unto Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goeth into the holy place before the Lord, when he cometh out, and when he cometh out, that he die not. So this little sound, and we're going to see a picture of this golden bell that also looks like a pomegranate. This little sound that this tiny little bells made on the hem of Aaron's garment was a sound that was made that Elohim would hear, and Aaron could come in and go out. In Exodus 23:13, we see that when Joshua goes up with Moses to the mountain, he goes to minister or to attend Moses. So this is exactly the same word that when Aaron ministers, he is attending within the holy place. He is ministering within the holy place. Pomegranates of blue and of purple and of scarlet round about the hem thereof, and bells of gold between them round about. A golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate. The Levites ministered to Jehovah on behalf of the people. So on your screen, this bell was found in the city of David. It's a recent find within the last 2 years. I'm not sure where they found it, their excavations, but they found it. And if you'll compare it to the pomegranate at the top of the screen, you'll see that they are very similar in appearance. The bell is closed, it's round, and it's golden. And of course, the pomegranates are round and they are closed. The sound of the bells between the pomegranate caused Elohim to hear and remember. What was he remembering? What would Elohim have to remember? He was remembering the covenant he had made with his people. Their sins had made his dwelling place on earth unclean. So when Aaron goes into the holy place, what he does, Leviticus 16:16 tells us, he is making an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions and in all their sins. Okay, so he shall do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. So Aaron was going in to make this atonement for the uncleanness of the people that had caused the holy place to become unclean. The first thing it says in 16, he shall make an atonement for the holy place. Why? Because the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions in all their sins. So he shall do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. The condition of the people is directly affecting the condition of the tabernacle. So when Aaron is going in, he is bearing, further up in Leviticus, in his person, he is bearing the sins of the people into the tabernacle. And this sound is reminding Elohim of his covenant with the people. Elohim was remembering the day he entered into a covenant with them, the people, and then they become his people. One of the words for Yom Teruah is called Zikron Teruah. Zikron Teruah, the command to his people to remember a shout, a call to remember the words of our covenant with Elohim at Sinai. Leviticus 23:24 says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, in the 1st day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath, a cessation, a resting, a memorial," that word is Zikron, "of the blowing of trumpets." And in Hebrew, it says Teruah. So it says in Hebrew, Zikron Teruah, a holy convocation. "And it shall come to pass on the 3rd day in the morning," this is Exodus 19:16, "that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount. And the voice," the coal, this word here is K-O-L, transliterated in Hebrew, coal, the sound, the voice of the trumpet, and the Hebrew word is shofar, "exceedingly loud, so that all the people that was in camp trembled. And the coal, the voice of the shofar, sounded long and waxed louder and louder. And Moses spake, and God, Elohim, Yehovah, answered him by a coal, by a voice." At Sinai, in this moment, when the people trembled, when they heard the sound of the shofar, they were entering into a covenant, a ketubah, which is tantamount to a wedding. Okay, Exodus 19 is a wedding scene. And if we look at a modern wedding as how it was set this day at Sinai, Moses was as the minister of the words of Elohim. Okay, so he is like the minister, the priest that officiated this ceremony. He ministered the words of Elohim. He mediated between the presence of Yah on the mountain and his people who were gathered at the base of the mountain. So you had Yah on the mountain, you had his bride standing by at the foot of the mountain, and you had Moses ministering the words. One aspect of remembering the Teruah must be remembering our covenant. Now I know that Teruah and a shofar and a horn sounding, a lot of people are going to automatically think about Numbers, okay, the book of Numbers, and the sound of the silver trumpets when Israel was to assemble their leaders, when they were to gather, when they were to pack up to march out. All of these different sounds that they had from the silver trumpets. But when we look at what we've been given about this day, we must understand that there was a call to remember the Teruah, specifically the shofar on this day, the Teruah, that represents the voice of Yah and the bridegroom at Sinai, and the bride standing at the foot of Sinai. Numbers 23:21, he hath not beheld the iniquity of Jacob, neither hath he seen the perverseness of Israel. The Lord his God was with him, and the Teruah of a king is among him. Teruah is used specifically for a king. In the first covenant, Jehovah was the king of Israel. In the second covenant, when Yeshua, the son of Jehovah, the part that Jehovah gave of himself, when he came and gave himself, he became our king. The bells on the hem of the robe of the priest cause Yah to remember and preserve the life of the priest. We've seen that the Teruah is the shout of a king and the voice of the bridegroom on Sinai. The book of the Song of Solomon will tie the pomegranates and the call to remember the voice of the shofar together for us. So the Song of Solomon is going to talk to us about the pomegranates, and it's going to tie that sound on the hem of the high priest's garment being represented in the pomegranate as a golden bell. It's going to tie that understanding with the understanding of the voice of the bridegroom, the sound of the shofar. Those will be tied together for us. Okay, again, we're going to look at this. It says, for he hath not beheld the iniquity of Jacob, neither hath he seen the perverseness in Israel. The Lord himself is with him, and the shout of a king is among them. This next verse is the Thessalonians 4:16, and below it you're going to see the Hebrew. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a teruah, and with the voice of the archangel, and with the shofar of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. I don't know, I did not highlight shofar, but it certainly is right there. And this says right here, ba teruah, in a teruah, in a shout, with the bakol, the sound, the voice of a shofar. Because in a Teruah, and then this is my transliteration, because in a Teruah falling from heaven, the voice, the call of a shofar of Elohim from his mouth, the exalted prince of the army, and the dead in Mashiach will get up so first. The trumpets described in Numbers 10 are a different instrument, described by the Hebrew word for trumpet. That word is ha-sosra. Excuse me, that is going off. I forgot to turn it off. Ha-sosra, not shofar. Matthew 24:31. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet. Again, this word is shofar. And they shall gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to another. So this is Matthew 24 in Hebrew. And this trumpet is a shofar. Revelation 10:1, again, this is shofar. I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and behold, a great coal, a voice of a shofar. And here we are, kol gadol ki kol shofar la'amar. So it's the voice of the great, because the voice of the great shofar to speak is literally what that transliterates as. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpets shall sound, again, that word is shofar, and the dead shall rise incorruptible, and we shall be changed. There's taka, this is a different word. Taka is I was just looking at that word. I was just looking at that word and I looked at it. Taka is a bit, oh, I know her, it was Psalms 81. Okay, so the taka here is it also the sound of a trumpet, but it's not a teruah, but it says the shofar. So this word is also talking about the shofar. Pomegranates on tops of the pillars. We talked about on tops of the pillars right up here. This section, the decorative ornate part on tops of the pillars were pomegranates. We see this in Kings 7:18, 7:20, 7:42. We see it in 2 Kings 25:17, and we see it in Chronicles 3:16 and chapter 4:13. These verses all describe an aspect of the tops of the pillars on either side of the door to the temple. The top of the pillars were decorated by pomegranates. The pillar pointed the way to the door of the temple. John 10:9 says, I am the door. Sorry, I don't know if you're hearing that tone or not. I apologize if you are, but it's throwing my train of thought off. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and come out and find pasture. 2 Chronicles 3:17, and he reared up the pillars before the temple, one on the right hand and one on the left hand, and called the name of that one on the right hand, Yahim, which means will establish, will rise up. And the name on the left hand, Boaz, which means will strengthen. Both of these point to an aspect of who Yeshua is. Okay, the voice of the shofar represents the voice of the Father and the voice of the Son. Yeshua said, I only say what I have heard from my Father. He came to do the Father's will. The pomegranates and the bells look alike. The sound or the voice, the call of the bell was our voice reminding Elohim of our covenant with him. Aaron represented us when he went in to make atonement for our sins. The Song of Solomon Tie the pomegranates and the command to remember together. Isn't it interesting how even the blooms look as if they are little bells? And just had a flash go through my mind. If you go to the website, I can't think of the name of it right now, but it is the one where the Sanhedrin are working on restoration of the temple rituals, the garments, the implements, the everythings that would be used in service to the temple. You will see that they had constructed their garment before this little bell was found right here. And it's more of a bell in the shape of like a bell in a church steeple with the open bottom. And I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if they looked at the roundness of the pomegranate and said, oh, a bell. And they made the the little, I don't know what you'd call that shape, but that little open bottom bell, that theirs had the embroidered round pomegranate and a open bottom bell. And I wonder if the springboard from that was the picture of the pomegranate. This is the pomegranate after the petal of the flower has dropped away, and this is the fruit forming behind. The call of the bride, Song of Solomon, mirrors the call of the bridegroom and Song of Solomon mirrors the call of the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride. It celebrates covenant intimacy. The song gives the voices, the call or the sounds to the two lovers. The lovers praise each other, yearn for each other. The two are in harmony, each desiring the other and rejoicing in intimacy. Shir Hashirim, the song begins with the bride's expression of desire for her beloved. In chapter 1 and verse 4, she mentions her beloved is a king. For the entire song, she is speaking about him, just as we read about in the shout of the king, when the camp of Israel is overlooked by Balaam and Balak. There was a shout of the king in the camp. So her beloved is a king. For the entire song, she is speaking about him, speaking to him, or seeking to locate him. The bridegroom describes his bride's beauty. Forgive the typo, I'm seeing a few. The bridegroom describes his bride's beauty. I am for my loved one, and my loved one is for me. He takes food from among the lilies. So the Jews have a special relationship to the Song of Solomon. Rabbi Akiva, who lived in the second century, said, let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you so you can see it. I think I've learned how to do that. There you go. Not too big. There. I lost my place. That Rabbi Akiva, who lived in the 2nd century CE, said in the Mishnah, the Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies. This statement alludes to an intimate relationship. For him and for the Jews, the Song of Songs is a song between God and Israel. That is why the book is sung. The whole song is sung in the original Hebrew on Passover. They understand that at Passover, they're getting ready to enter into the covenant at Shavuot when they would have arrived at Sinai. But we understand that there is another covenant. I'll leave that there for now. There's a renewed covenant, not another covenant, a renewed covenant. So in the original Hebrew, the whole song was sung on Passover, the holiday celebrating the Exodus from Egypt, when Jacob's descendants became a nation and entered into a covenant with Elohim. The male is God, and the female represents Israel as God's bride. Song of Solomon in chapter 4 and verse 3 says, to the bride, thy lips are like a thread of scarlet, thy speech is comely, thy temples like a slice of pomegranate within thy locks. Verse 13, thy plants are an orchard of pomegranates with pleasant fruits, camphire, and spikenard. So in Hebrew, correctly said, it says the side of your head is like a slice of pomegranate beside your veil. Right here we have a slice of pomegranate, and what rests behind our temple? Our thinking rests right here, our brain. And if we look at the shape of the pomegranate, it's round like the head. So a slice of it would give us a peek inside to what we are thinking in a spiritual picture. It's said twice. Song of Solomon 6:7 says, as a piece of pomegranate are thy temples within thy locks. And the literal Hebrew says, a slice of pomegranate is your temple against your veil. Now, that was a chiasm. It was said twice. What happened in the middle of those two chiasms? That what happened between Song 4:3 and Song 6:7. The bride is searching the city for her beloved and praises her bridegroom. She speaks to the daughter of Jerusalem to tell her, daughters of Jerusalem, to tell them, if they find her beloved, to tell her. They in turn ask the bride, why is your love better than ours? And then they also seek him with her. The bride's thinking, the bride's focus in the entire song is only on her beloved. Throughout chapter 5, the bride's mind is fixed and focused on her beloved, and she is talking about his beauty to others. So I want to pause here. We have the bells on the hem of the garment for Aaron the high priest when he entered into the Holy of Holies to make atonement for our sins. The call and the sound of the bells in the pomegranate shape, reminding Elohim so that he would not kill Aaron as he was going in and coming out. We have the sound of the shofar on Yom Teruah, which represents the voice of God and the voice of the Messiah, voice of the Father, and voice of Messiah. Then we have the pomegranates and the bride being represented as an orchard of pomegranates. And we have the picture in Song of Solomon of the bride who's seeking her beloved, who's looking for him, who's talking about him, who's praising him, who's telling others about her beautiful bridegroom. Have you seen him? Do you know him? Do you know where he is? And we have the other women of Jerusalem responding to her and saying, why is your love better than ours? And they end up seeking her beloved with her. Beautiful, isn't it? Another call to remember. In Nehemiah 8:1, we find that during the rebuilding of the temple, that there was a call to the people to remember. Nehemiah 8:1, and all the people gathered themselves together as one man in the street that was before the water gate. And they spoke unto Ezra the scribe to bring the book of the law of Moses. What was given at Sinai? The covenant, the law of the book that was given to Moses, not of Moses, which Elohim had commanded to Israel, their ketubah. And Ezra the priest brought the law before the congregation, both of men and women. And all that could hear with understanding. Breaks, stop right here. On this day, understanding returned to the pomegranate, the minds of the people. Teruah, the 7th month and the 1st day, they read the words in their hearing. Normally, it's read on Sukkot during a Shemitah, and we're going to see here that they also did that later. But on the 7th day in the 1st month, just like we were reading about earlier, just as we were demonstrated earlier, just in what we were given, this 1st day in the 7th month, we are to remember the Torah, the Ketubah. Verse 2, and Ezra the priest brought out the law before the congregation of both men and women, and all that could hear with understanding upon the 1st day of the 7th month. And he read therein before the street that was before the water gate until from morning until midday, before the men and the women, and those that could understand, and the ears of all the people were attentive unto the book of the law. In this season, are you attentive to your ketubah, to the terms of your covenant? It's very, 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 very important. And this is a critical time, because in just a few more days, we will have reached Yom Kippur. And I'll go into that in the next teaching, obviously, as we get closer, hopefully before this day. Pray for me that life doesn't get so busy. I'm talking about my natural life. I have a lot of responsibilities. Pray that the Elohim clears the way and I get this to you ahead of Yom Kippur. I will try my best. Nehemiah 8:8 says, so they read the book of the law of God distinctly and gave the sense and caused them to understand the reading. We'll go forward and see. I'm going to talk about this a little bit here, and I'm probably going to talk about it again. In my opinion, Nehemiah is prophetic. Nehemiah chapter 8, verse 1, and this passage right here is prophetic to those of us who are alive today specifically. For years, as one who has strove to understand the feasts, knew that they were significant to Elohim in my very basic understanding, I have understood that we will be those of the final ingathering in a prophetic spiritual 7th month setting. So when I hear things specifically about the 7th month, I pay specific attention because I believe it's written to those of us who live now. And I'll be the first to tell you that, as Paul says, we're looking through a glass darkly, specifically when we look at the 7th month feasts. Well, how can I say that? Well, because if we simply dissect the word and what is written, we have probably 3 to 4 times more information on the feasts that dominate the beginning of the year than we do the feasts that dominate the end of the year. Because most of the New Testament was written about what transpired during that time. And in the New Testament, there's very little written about what transpired during this time when Yeshua walked the earth. So, from my perspective, when we look at the 7th month feasts, the glass is a little bit more dark than when we look at the feasts at the beginning of the year. But I do believe that this 7th-month series of feasts specifically have a fulfillment to those of us who are alive today. And, I'm not saying that we're a last generation. I'm not saying that. That's not the intention of what I'm saying. I'm not even saying what I believe about this, but I'm saying that even if Yah tarries 100 more years, that those who are alive until the final ingathering, which is what Sukkot is called, those who remain until the final ingathering, that's what the 7th-month feasts represent. These have their fulfillment during our generations. So the week of Sukkot during the Shemitah is the usual day that the people heard the entire Torah read. But on Zikron, Teruah, in the book of Nehemiah, the nation stands to hear the words that the mighty shofar sound delivered at Sinai. Deuteronomy 31:2, and Moses commanded them, saying, at the end of every 7 years in the I cannot say that word, in the solemn time of the year, of the year of release, in the Feast of Temples, the Feast of Tabernacles, golly, I don't know if you can hear the sound on the computer or not, so sorry. So during the solemn time of the year, the Feast of Tabernacles, when all of Israel shall appear before the Lord thy God in the place where he shall choose, thou shalt read the law before all of Israel in their hearing. Gather the people together, men and children and women, and thy stranger that is in thy gates, they may hear and they may learn and fear the Lord your God, and observe to do all the words of the law, that their children, which have not known any of the things, all of the wonders and the signs and the history, may hear and learn and fear the Lord your God, as long as you live in the land whither you go over to possess the Jordan, to possess it. Nehemiah 8:18. Also day by day, from the first day until the last. Now they're talking about, just like we're reading about in Deuteronomy, they're talking about the Feast of Tabernacles, they're talking about Sukkot. Also day by day, from the first day until the last day, he read in the book of the law of God, and they kept the feast 7 days. And on the 8th day was a solemn assembly according to the manner. From mourning to joy as the covenant is rediscovered. Think about our generation. We've got a lot of people, we like to use the term that they're waking up. And how are they? I know how I was when I woke up. I was angry. I wasted a lot of years in the Sunday church. I wasted a lot of years of the pastor telling me the Old Testament has no value today, and yet we pay tithe. That part had value. The rest of it we didn't listen to. I mean, I had been called in the office because I said something out of the Old Testament as a measure of how a situation should be handled. I literally got called in his office, and he literally said to me, the Old Testament is dead. It has passed away, and we do not pay attention to it. And when I woke up out of that, and I knew that I had believed a lie, and I had wasted so many years of my life, I was hurt, and I was angry, and I was sad, and I was devastated. All these emotions because I had sincerely tried to serve and worship Jehovah. So we see an aspect of that in Nehemiah 8. And Nehemiah, which is a Tershipha, and Ezra the priest scribe, and the Levites that taught the people, said unto all the people, this is a holy day unto the Lord your God. Mourn not nor weep. For all the people wept when they heard the words of the law. Sorry. Now they're tears of gratitude. Sorry. Then he said unto them, go your way, eat the fat, drink the sweet, Send portions of it to them who have nothing prepared. These are prophetic words to our generation. For this day is holy unto the Lord, neither be you sorry, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. So the Levites stilled the people, saying, hold your peace, for this day is holy, neither be you grieved. And all the people went their way to eat, to drink, and to send portions out. Have you sent portions out to those who are still grieving for the time that they've wasted, for the lies that they believed and inherited, to make great mirth, because they had understood the words that were declared unto them? So we have another tradition in Judaism here in Israel. We have this tradition that 613 seeds is what is the side of the pomegranate. That has been disproven. I would say 13 ways to Sunday, but I'm going to say 13 ways to Shabbat. But if we consider where the tradition may have come from, the bride in the Song of Solomon has her mind, her pomegranate, fixed on her beloved, who is Yeshua, the Word made flesh. The tradition of the 613 seeds within the pomegranate represented the 613 law, or the mitzvot, makes a little bit more sense to me now. So if we understand that they see those seeds as the book of the law of Moses, on the bride, on the mind of the bride, which they see as the Jews, that makes a little bit more sense. Now, the other thing is I thought I made this slide, and it may be coming up, and I apologize if it is it is at Yom Teruah, their Rosh Hashanah, that they always have pomegranates on their table. They see pomegranates as the new first fruit of the year. So they set it on the table with all of their first day of the seventh month, Rosh Hashanah, or Yom Teruah, with all of their preparations. They have a Rosh Hashanah Seder, just like they have a Pesach Seder, which is a meal or event with a book that has a liturgy that has a certain order. So they have a Rosh Hashanah on the first day of seventh month. They have a Seder, which includes these pomegranates as part of that. But the 613 seeds within the pomegranate is a tradition that makes a little bit more sense. But also, that's the dangerous thing about adding tradition. It causes us to become lost to the truth, because the tradition has replaced the understanding. The pomegranates / Nehemiah people, that's us. I believe prophetically we are similar to the people in the book of Nehemiah. We are waking up to a forgotten covenant and are made up of people who pursue and hunger to understand the truth. We have Torah and we have the beloved on our mind. We have and do mourn for the lost time and understanding, and yet with joy embrace what we have been given in understanding. What do the pomegranates represent? They represent the bride of Yeshua, who is consumed with knowing him. The bride that can't help but speak up to him of others about her books, who can't help but speak to others about her beloved and her love for him. And I made just a couple of additional notes here as I was vacuuming today. So we have 10 days of seeking within this covenant that we've constructed our lives around. What needs to be changed between us and our beloved, and between us and the people that make up his body, his bride. We're heading to the day of being found worthy to be inscribed. But we aren't found worthy unless we're found worthy in Yeshua. I know this was not necessarily a very long teaching. I hope you got some good things out of it. These 7th month first fruits offering again are more shrouded. And I also understand from an agricultural perspective, the reason that they are more shrouded is, and not written about in the specific timing of it, is because once you've set correctly the wild heirloom wheat and the wild heirloom barley in their correct timing, and then you've got a triple check on the grapes of the 5th month, the rest of these species fall out exactly when they're supposed to. And I said this before, I'm going to say this again. These words were not written to us. You and even I do not survive on this, what this land provides out here, the way the people in the first covenant did. These 7 species, 7 first fruits offering, what the land yielded, they lived and died by. They lived by it when they were obedient, and they died by it when they were disobedient. They didn't have enough food. It had disease and plague. The land didn't yield, the trees didn't yield. The flocks and the cattle failed. So these words that we're reading, they're for us to understand, but they weren't written to us. So the fact that when we get to the 7th month, I'm having to look to the land and pay attention over these years and the coming years to double check to make sure that I'm understanding the timing, it's because I wasn't born living and dying by what the land provides. But we are at a time, just like Nehemiah chapter 8, when by the grace of Elohim, he's restoring understanding to us. So I really appreciate your time, really appreciate you listening. I'm going to ask for a huge favor in closing. I have a goal this year. I would like to do live updates from fields in the coming barley inspection. But in order for me to be able to do that, I need to have 1,000 subscribers. Now, as far as I understand it, you don't have to click the bell to get the instant updates, as a lot of channels ask you to. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to make sure you should subscribe so I can reach 1,000 subscribers. And so when I get to the barley field, I can go on my cell phone. I can do a live broadcast in the moment of my discovery. If you can subscribe to the channel, if you can share the channel, if you can encourage others to subscribe to the channel and share the channel, we may reach that 1,000 subscription number before the beginning of the year, because this is the 7th month. We've either got 7 plus 5 months is 12. We either have 5 more months, depending on the barley and what Elohim provides. We could have to add an extra lunar cycle. We could have 6 months. So if we work really hard at bringing the subscription up as we do the barley inspections at the end of the 11th, beginning of the 12th month, then I may be able to bring you in live in the field in the moment. That's it, and I'll see you in a couple of days with another teaching on, it will be the dates, what is going to happen next. Hope you enjoyed your Hag, and I hope these next few days as we approach Yom Kippur are very meaningful and very precious and very life-giving. Bye. Shalom.